What is up, guys? It is Rami Noodles here, and today I'm here to talk about Star Wars Galaxies once again. My favorite MMO, my favorite game of all time. So, why am I talking about SWG today? Well, SWG Emu announced recently their SWG Realms project and SWG NFS, and said they will also be partnering with CU Emu. So, I wanted to talk about the Combat Upgrade Emulator project, kind of where it's at the moment, and then also talk about the differences between pre-CU and the CU, because I've seen a lot of comments on videos or on Reddit saying, like, is the CU NGE or is the CU part of a pre-CU patch? Like, there seems to be a big misunderstanding of what the CU is. It's not NGE, it's not pre-CU, it's not restoration. The CU is just the CU. So I'm going to go over what the differences are, because it's going to affect everybody who wants to do combat. Surprise, surprise, it is a combat upgrade, so it's all relevant there. But first, before we dive into that, I want to talk a bit about the Combat Upgrade Emulator project. So you can go to CUemu.com, and if you really want to, you can join the Discord. I do recommend it. Eventually, they will be starting to announce things in that Discord. But for now, the website it exists. You can't really make an account right now. You might ask me why I have a log out button. It's because I've been an internal tester since October of 2023, and that's why. But right now, making an account is totally useless. So let me just go over some of the things I think matter on the website, just to give y'all a sense of where it's at and what the goal is. So under authentic recreation, it says, we strive for an accurate representation of the CU rule set from skill progression to combat calculations, ensuring an experience that feels just like the original. This being said, we also do not believe in implementing things broken. If something didn't work during live, it will eventually work here, although likely with marginal effects. And some of that has already been implemented, things that didn't work in live being implemented, and it is very marginal. You'll almost never notice it. And also, if your brain is like really awesome and can remember things from 20 years ago, you'll probably, I mean, there's some people that do remember, some people that misremember. Memory is very unreliable. So you'll see some things that if your memory is good, you'll just be like, I don't remember that working. And you'll be like, okay, it works, but it's not like super game changing. Like literally none of it is. Then what their aim is. So while we aim for authenticity, we remain open to adding quality of life improvements and fixes that align with the spirit of the CU without compromising the charm and game mechanics that defined this era. CU Emu's goal is to replicate Publish 23, specifically while sprinkling in select changes from Publish 24. While some changes were for the better, others were game-breaking and silent preparation for the NGE that would later completely alter the state of the game. So I think this is a really, really excellent idea to do, because Publish 24 did have some really bad changes that were very poorly received by the community. But the other things that were cool in the Publish 24, sorry dudes, I'm having a tough time talking. Anxiety ramps up when I start hitting that record button. Doesn't happen on stream, don't know why. Anyways, they're going to implement Squad Leader, but it's going to be slightly rebalanced. If your memory, once again, is really good, you might recall that some people were one-shotting people with Squad Leader, and they don't want that, so that's not going to happen. But we are going to get Mustafar eventually. Mustafar is part of Publish 24, and so that exists, and that will be in CU Emu at some point. Now, let's go over the status of project. If it's in green, it's there. It works, maybe needs some tuning. Orange, being worked on. Red, in the planning phase, not being worked on quite yet. As you can see, there's a lot more green than there is red so far. Tutorial planet selection, most likely, if I had to hazard a guess, by the time this server launches, which could be soon, I'm not saying when, but it could be soon, you'll probably just spawn in Mos Eisley like the rest of us, and yeah. Skill mods, I'll go over that in a little bit. Tutorial, go over, I mean, there's nothing to go over, just kind of, you know what I'm saying? JTL, this is also being worked on by SWG Emu, and it's going to have to be somewhat modified for the CU, but a lot of JTL stuff has been ported over to CU Emu. And actually a lot of cross-pollination between SWG Emu and CU Emu in development of certain things, which is really, really cool. These teams have been working not quite like this, but they've been working together, which is really, really cool to see. Bounty hunter missions kind of work. They'll be there'll be bounty hunter missions. Don't worry. They're kind of really a big deal in the CU from stuff that they drop. But today I'm not actually going to go over into any specific classes. I'm just going to kind of give a general overview of things that'll affect you during combat so that you understand no matter what profession you're playing. So I'm not going to go over BH stuff today. Quests. So all the pre-CU quests work. Like the Padawan trials, the village, all that stuff works. All the, if you want to do Jabba's, the Corvette, all that works. The stuff that doesn't work is more CU specific. That is being developed, that is being put in, and this is a result of CU Emu working with SWG Emu and them having the core 3 code base to start from, which is really, really, really cool. Buffs work, right? Doctor buffs, food buffs, drink buffs, skill buffs, spices. Behavior tree AI implementation, and creature spawns and layers. This is more to do with like some of this is related to your grind, some of this isn't, some of this is related to actually like CH. There was a creature revamp in the CU, and then there was also a creature handler revamp. So this is going to be worked on, or is in the process of being worked on. They've got, GCW stuff works, resource spawning, all this other stuff. Creature crafting, that's a bioengineer thing. That's not in yet, as far as I know. Maybe not in fully. Loot tables do need to be kind of worked on because there's a lot of SEAs and stuff that dropped in the CU that were CU specific. There was also a bunch of CU specific stuff in relation to smuggler and other professions. So yeah, the loot tables are going to be worked on, and they are being worked on. Anyways, a lot more green. You can see all the structure stuff works. Player cities fully working. Bioengineer. One thing I'll say about bioengineer is all the medical crafting went to bioengineer, and I'll get more into that a little later. Commando mostly works. There's some stuff that needs to be added, and it's not too bad, but the commando stuff that existed in the CU will exist on CU Emu, and I'm very, very happy about that. Creature handler went under a major revamp in the CU, later in the CU, and they have not yet implemented it, and I've actually been digging for information about how it actually worked, and I will tell you from what I've found so far, I think creature handler is going to be something that shines in the CU. I think it's going to be a really, really cool profession. It's too bad that it was so short-lived in the CU before they deleted it for the NGE. Isn't that cool, guys? Shipwright, another, SWG Emu thing that's going to happen with JTL, all this other stuff. Smuggler, most of everything in Smuggler works. The only thing that needs work is slicing, and components for Smuggler need to drop as loot. And the only thing in Smuggler that doesn't work is armor slicing. Weapon slicing works, although it's different. Squad leader's not implemented. Weaponsmith is being worked on. I think some weapons we don't truly know the stats of or whatever. Armor attachments, clothing attachments, these things, they're going to be worked on, or they are being worked on. There's going to be like new stats added that were CU specific, because currently I think at the moment it's just specific to what dropped in pre-CU, and there's new stats in the CU. So slicing, I went over that. Cybernetics, that's being worked on. Kashyyyk quests, I know that's being worked on. A lot of progress has been made on Kashyyyk. Kashyyyk dungeons aren't in. Mustafar quests and Mustafar dungeons are not yet in. All right, so I've talked about the project, where it's at. It's really easy to go over what isn't in versus what is in. So we're now going to move over to your combat characters, your characters. So first thing I'm going to talk about is your level. So this character is level 80. I believe if you were to just do, like, let's say you just go Master Pistolier, you'd be level 54. And then once you pick up a second, like Elite or Hybrid Profession Mastery, you'll be set to level 80, maybe something before that even. And then you can dabble in some other stuff as well. But anyways, what does level affect? So believe it or not, there is a level in pre-CU that you cannot see, but the level is dependent on your skills and what weapon you're holding. So let's just switch over to pre-CU right here. So this is Finalizer. This is my character, Rami Noodles. Say hello, Rami Noodles. Anyways, we're waving. So I've got a power hammer equipped. As you can see, I do not have Swordsman. I've got some Brawler. You can see I've got Master Terraskasi. I know some of you lore nerds are probably going to be like, oh my god, it's not pronounced that way. I don't care, nerd. Stop bullying me, okay? I'm just trying to explain how the game works. And this is, so your level exists in pre-CU, and I will demonstrate this. So if I go to this mission terminal and I start looking for missions, we can see that this mission is level 11. It's got, its difficulty is 11, and I've got a power hammer equipped. I've got no two-handed skills besides novice brawler. You can see these levels are all different, 8, 7, 6, so on and so forth, right? I unequipped my power hammer because I am a Terras Kasi master, and I'm actually a good one, not like that PlayStation 1 game that was totally broken. You can see now the levels have changed. I'm getting higher level missions. I'm getting level 48 missions. I'm getting 48, 48, 44, 44, 46. So you can see that based on my skills and what weapon I'm holding, in this case unarmed, that my mission levels go up. So the level actually exists in pre-CU. Some players don't know that, or a lot of players, I think, don't know that. And it actually affects some of your defensive roles, believe it or not, like state immunity being achieved, I think, if you're like at Master Fencer or something like that. Whatever, if you're a Master Box, you like need less defenses to cap on stuff. It's a big, invisible thing. And I have a whole video ranting about how SWG pre-CU needs to explain itself and that the future of SWG is bright and all this other whatnot. So anyways, that exists in pre-CU, for the most part. Actually, not at all. Your level doesn't affect your ham whatsoever in pre-CU, and your level fluctuates based on what gear you're equipping. In the CU, it doesn't matter what gear you're equipping, your level is static according to the skill boxes that you actually have. This character being a little bit of combat medic, a little bit master pistolier, master smuggler, so he's always going to be level 80 no matter what weapon he's holding. Now, the only thing level actually affects in the CU is, I believe there's some sort of damage modifier based on level in PvE, and then there's also a damage modifier. No, it's just PvE. Doesn't exist in PvP. And then also your max health is affected by your level. So everyone starts off with around 1,000 health, depending on your species. It's not race, guys. It's species. I know you lore nerds are probably, oh my god, yes, he got it right. Congratulations. He's not a Neanderthal. So it's species. This character's a human. Humans don't have bonuses, and they don't have negatives as far as your ham goes. So 3,000 health at level 80 is default, but if you were to play something like Trandoshan or Wookiee, you would have above 3,000 health without buffs. And then if you were to play something like Bothan or Twi'lek, you would actually have less than 3,000 health. But don't worry, dear friends, we make up for it. Let me talk about action in mind real quick before I start talking about species bonus. So action in mind in the CU, I think, is kind of coded as like 1,000, like it's a number, but the only representation that you ever get of it in game is percentage based. So your action and your mind cannot change. The max of those cannot change. They're always static, but their regen can change through buffs and debuffs, and also depending on the species you pick. Now, when you use an attack, you're going to use a lot more action and some mind. And then when you heal, you're going to use mostly mind and a little action. So your regen rates actually like super matter. That is going to factor into what species you're picking, as well as what buffs you use, and depends on what professions you are. So if you're playing mainly a healer for your group, you're going to want a lot of mind regen. But if you're doing a DPS, you're probably going to want a lot more action regen, so you can keep that up. Now, let's talk about the difference in species. So, there's Bothan male, Bothan female. So we got Bothan, human, Moncal, Merodian, Trandoshan, Twi'lek, Wookiee, Zabrak, Celestin, and Ithorian. So Constitution is your regen for health, Stamina is your regen for action here, and Willpower is your regen for mind. These essentially are exactly, you can see the strength, the quickness, and the focus, which exist in pre-CU, but they're all set to 0 because you don't actually spend there's no modifiers on spending except for the special attack cost on your weapon, which I'll get into later. So Bothans have negative 100 health. So if you're level 80 Bothan, you will have 29 max 100 health instead of 3,000. Your Constitution, your regen of your health will be slower, but you will regen stamina, action, 20% faster because the base max is 1,000. So having plus 200 stamina is equal to 20%. Sorry, if you have 1,000 stamina, getting an extra 200 is 20%, which is, 200 is 20% of 1,000. And then willpower, negative 50, so that's minus 5%. Humans, you can see, have no stat adjustments whatsoever. Moncals have minus 100 health, minus 150 constitution, 5% hit to action regen, and plus 20% to mind regen. This is also relevant something I want to say real quick. This is relevant because some of the buffs in game are percent based, like some of the dock buffs and spices, those are percent based. So if your base is actually higher, you're going to get a higher result from percentage based buffs in game. So your species really does matter. Rhodians get minus 100 health, minus 150 constitution, plus 300 stamina. So that's 30% extra action regen, but negative 15% mind regen. This is a huge, like, if you want to just swing at people really fast for a lot of DPS, this is what you probably want to do. Trandoshan male, 150 extra health, 500 constitution, which is like 50% health regen. I don't think this is necessarily worth. A lot of people have like going back on the forums and stuff, there's a lot of talk about regen, but no one ever mentions their species because, again, Star Wars Galaxies had continued this problem of not mentioning how the stats on characters and items and stuff work. And so people are talking about all sorts of different regen rates on the forums without understanding that the species you have actually super matters. And I don't think health regen is all that important, but if you want to go for a health regen stacked character, go for it. Trandoshans get a penalty to stamina and willpower, and then Twi'leks, you know, they get a little bit of constitution, a little bit of stamina, willpower, yada yada. Wookiees get extra health, 250, plus 300 to constitution, negative 50 to stamina, and no mind penalty whatsoever, because Wookiees are actually not stupid, guys. Zabrak males, bonus to health, decrease to health regen, and then they just get a willpower regen. I think this is actually one of the better races to pick, the Zabrak, just because of the extra mind regen. You're not actually penalizing yourself at all, basically, because health regen is really not that relevant from my testing, and I've been testing for over a year and a half about. Yeah, actually a year and a half. So I've been testing for a year and a half. I'm not seeing the health regen be super relevant. Celestial male, plus 50 health, negative 100 constitution, 50 stamina, 100 willpower. It's not bad. It's also pretty good, just like kind of like the Zabrak. Thorian males, 300 health, 200 constitution, negative 100 to stamina, negative 50 willpower. Now, we've talked about that, the species difference. Personally, if you want to know what I'm going to do, I'm probably going to do a Mon Cal, and I don't know how many character slots we're going to have, but assuming that there's 2, there might be more. I have no clue. CU Emu hasn't told me. I have no idea. But I'm probably going to do a Mon Cal, and assuming I get a second character, I'll probably also do a Bothan. That's just me. I'm going to have a healer and then a DPS that doesn't trade off so hard on mind regen, because mind regen is really important, guys. I cannot emphasize how important it is. Okay, so going on to the next topic, I want to talk about the stats. So you guys are familiar with melee defense. Melee defense exists. Accuracy exists, range defense exists. You all know about these things if you're veteran Star Wars Galaxies players, but those stats have changed to some degree. So I'm going to talk about those specifically, and hopefully that helps. Okay, so first of all, you're going to notice something like weapon-specific defense. So this is Pistols 1 in Marksman. You're going to see that pistol defense is a stat. It's a +5. What does it do? What it does is it gives you +5 melee and range defense when you have a pistol equipped. That is also in existence for Carbine. There's Carbine's defense, +5. You're going to get 5 melee defense and 5 range defense when you have a Carbine equipped. So there's weapon-specific defenses, and those are important because I believe there's SEAs for those, and you'll want to stack those on top of having melee and range defense. Now, what does melee and range defense actually do? Now, I don't know the actual numbers in terms of, well, I'll explain it, and then you guys will understand why I don't know the actual number. So, to go back to pre-CU, we'll look at Teras Kasi. We'll look at this character here. In intermediate balance conditioning, or 0100 or X1XX TK, if you know that's how you talk about things, you'll notice you have melee damage mitigation 1. You go up to the third box, it's melee damage mitigation 2, and then at the master box, it's melee damage mitigation 3. What does melee damage mitigation do? And also, what does the ranged equivalent do? So what that does in pre-CU is if you have a weapon with 100 min damage and a 200 max damage, and you're going against someone that has damage mitigation 1, damage mitigation 1 is going to shave off 20% of the difference between your min and the max. So if it's 100 min, 200 max, melee damage mitigation 1, it's going to shave off 20%, meaning your effective damage is 100 min, 180 max. And then it goes up 20% for each one. So melee damage mitigation 2 is 40%, and damage mitigation 3 is 60%. At 60%, with 100 min, 200 max weapon, it would be 100 to 140 because we shaved off 60% of the difference. So that's what melee damage mitigation does. This has been moved over to melee defense and range defense in the CU. As you can see, I've got melee defense and I've got some, well, maybe we'll just do this. So I've got melee and range defense, 200 of each, but it works a little bit differently, okay? So it's not exactly shaving the min and max off your weapons. As you can see, my DE10 here, I've got a 407 to 1036 max, DE10. It's actually, what is happening is the defense is going to determine where on your weapon you hit. So let's just say with melee and range defense at 0 accuracy, let's just say I hit more towards 500 damage in this range. So like instead of hitting at 1036 or whatever, I'll just hit for 500 on every special. Every special I do will be counted as 500 damage, and that's how the multipliers will go through. It's not actually like a range, it's more of just a set number. And I don't know what the cap is. I'm sorry. I don't know if there's diminishing returns. I'm sorry. But you can increase your damage by having accuracy. So accuracy rolls against defense to increase the range of your weapon. So if you have more defense over your opponent's accuracy, they're going to hit more towards the min of their weapon. But if you have more accuracy over their defense, you're going to hit more towards the max of your weapon. I don't know what that number is, where it's like, oh, officially we're hitting for max constantly. That the devs know. They won't tell me. It's cool. It's just a mystery for now until the source is like open. But for now, we just don't know. But that is how it works. And I think it's really an important distinction to make. There's another stat I would like to talk about, which is the general stats in the CU. So things like general ranged accuracy, general range speed got added to the game. There's also general melee accuracy, general melee speed. These will just work with whatever weapon. So if you've got general melee speed, it's going to work with whatever weapon you've got equipped, as long as it's a melee weapon, including sabers, which is super cool. Also, speaking of sabers, Jedi tapes got added. I think there's like force lightning accuracy and like double bladed speed and double bladed accuracy. And I think there's even a force power regen tape, but it doesn't go to plus 25. Just letting y'all know, it doesn't go to plus 25. Don't shoot the messenger. Just letting y'all know, it doesn't go to plus 25. Anyways, so there's quite a few stats that got added. There's a bunch of stuff for like medic and stuff, but I'm not going to really go over that. It's kind of self-descriptive, you know, so you can just figure it out. It's not going to be a big deal. You're just going to have the stats that you have and whatever. It's not a problem. So the next thing I want to talk about is abilities and cooldowns. So believe it or not, there is a global cooldown in the CU. And a lot of people have said, well, I don't like that. I don't like that. Look, I did that. You can see my character's toolbar went around. We'll just do this. We'll silence this guy. He's got a panic shot on him, so he's just like moving around now. Do this. He's level 1. Whoops. We'll just kill him real quick. You can see that I've got a global cooldown, and it exists. It's a thing. And when I press a button, all my skills go on cooldown. And then, you know, if you've played WoW before, I'm sure you're familiar with this. It's not a big deal. Everybody gets it. It's cool. Pre-CU also has a global cooldown. The difference between pre-CU and CU is the combat queue. So in pre-CU, your global cooldown is also your individual skill cooldown. So for example, if you use Force Heal, it's got a 6-second cooldown, which means it's going to be 6 seconds before you can do anything. So your global cooldown is your skill cooldown in pre-CU, whereas this one decouples the two. So you have your individual ability cooldowns and your actual GCD. And what determines your actual GCD, we'll just take a look at my DE10. You can see that the attack speed on my DE10 is 2.04, but then my modified speed is 1.31, which can be reduced with pups, can be reduced with slicing, and will also be reduced with stats, so like general range speed or pistol speed. Those are going to factor into what your GCD is. Not only that, but the faster your weapon, the lower the cooldowns will be on your individual abilities as well. This is something to factor into when you're building a character, because if you have like a really slow weapon, and you want to do like, let's say you want to be a CC machine in the CU. There's a lot of different CCs, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But say you want to be a CC machine and you want to have these off cooldown as fast as possible, you're probably not going to go for a weapon that is super high damage or whatever. You're just going to try to get something that's like really, really, really fast so you can spam out the CC as much as possible. Also, something that's one of the things I actually like about the CU. There's a lot of different ways to customize your gear in terms of what you want to do in combat. So this is really cool. The next thing I want to talk about is the healing. So combat medic exists. A lot of people are going to be picking up either doctor or combat medic. I foresee a lot of people just doing one or the other. The requirements to pick up doctor and combat medic changed, so there are a lot less skill points. So it's not like killing template diversity, kind of like it does in pre-CU when everyone has to have doctor or whatever. All the medicine crafting got moved to bioengineer. So we'll take a look at bioengineer, and they make enhancers. So enhancers are things that can go on your medical abilities and either improve them in some way, like if it's a dot, like if it's neurotoxin, which is a poison for CM, it'll enhance the damage of that. If it's back to toss, it enhances that, so on and so forth. It's not like super overpowered. It is a nice boost. It's not like over the top. It's not like spider venoms in pre-CU where you're going to get a really sick enhancer and that guy's going to tick for half his health and all this other stuff. Like that's not going to be a thing, which is great because that was truly, truly atrocious. But the thing I will like to say is that healing actually doesn't require any stims. So you can just heal without needing any crafting whatsoever. In fact, you'll master Doctor and Combat Medic without any gear whatsoever. All you got to do is use your actual abilities and then train them up as you get the XP. And training is actually super fast in the CU. If you're trying to level like CM or whatever, you're gonna level it super quick in a group, which by the way, grouping is a huge thing in the CU. To grind, you're gonna wanna be in a group. It's a big thing. Maybe I'll make another video about how to grind in the CU, but for the most part, yeah, this is a huge, huge thing. So enhancers, not necessary, but very useful. Now, there is a stim you can get from Bioengineer that everybody can use, including Jedi. Doesn't require any medical skills whatsoever, but has a 30-second cooldown. But there is a food that reduces that cooldown to 0. So you're essentially trading off a cooldown for drink filling, which, yes, you do still have foods in the CU. So we were talking about stats and all this other stuff. There's a lot of different buffs out there. More so than, and the options actually kind of vary more so than what exists in pre-CU. So as far as buffs go in pre-CU, you're just getting like your health and your action buffed and your mind buffed and then their substats. And then you'll eat some food, which does exist on here as well. Although I don't have any currently in my inventory. You guys know how food works, right? So this is a Mirage Melon, but it's just action regen, mind regen. But you know, you're gonna get melee defense food, you're gonna get range defense food, you're gonna get accuracy food, stuff like that, just like you would in pre-CU. But there's also going to be some things that can be buffed that normally you can't in pre-CU, like attack speed. And then there'll be debuffs as well, like attack speed debuffs. You're going to have slows, like movement slows on your character. You're going to have things like mezzes, which is kind of like a stun that breaks on damage. You're going to have silences, which is what Panic Shot is from Smuggler. So there's a lot of things you can do in the CU with like debuffs and buffs. And your character stats are going to vary throughout combat. It's not gonna be like a static thing. You know, I guess the only debuffs in pre-CU are like blind, dizzy, stun, and like intimidate. So those, and I guess if like force weaken, if you count that from Jedi. But for the most part, you're just gonna have, there's gonna be a wide range of debuffs hitting you, and there's gonna be not a huge range of buffs in the CU. Like it's not gonna be like NGE or anything close to that, but you're gonna have, you know, some improved things going on. And there's a lot of foods to consider and use, and you know, I'm sure the food meta is going to change from what it was in live, because I go back and I look at live videos and I see the food rotations and I'm like, I think that might change during CU Emu. You know, it's 10 years, 20 years later, our gamer IQ has increased. So because our gamer IQ has increased, we're going to naturally be better than our predecessors or our previous selves, really, if you think about it. And, you know, use things more efficiently, do things more efficiently, and, you know, be more meta. So there's that. So another thing that I want to talk about is, I mean, there's so many things. I might have said another thing too many times in this video, but basically there's knockdown recovery. So dizzy knockdown does not exist in this game. Like knockdown exists and dizzy exists in the CU, but it doesn't exist in tandem with each other, kind of like pre-CU, where if you get dizzied and then knocked down, it's really hard to get up, or if you're changing postures, you have a chance to get knocked down, so on and so forth. What's going to happen is you get knocked down, and then you're going to use knockdown recovery, and you're going to get back up. It's going to cost you some action. It's actually going to cost you a chunk of action, so it's not free. So it's going to cost you, so you need to be wary of how much action you're spending in combat. But yeah, knockdown recovery, everybody should have that on a toolbar. What I'm probably going to do is just make a macro for it and bind it to my spacebar so it's off my toolbar. Yeah, knockdown recovery, super duper matters. We were talking about SCAs before. There are some loot differences. So there are no dot weapons. There are no legendary or exceptional weapons. You're never going to loot something crazy OP like that. Depending on how they put in Mustafar and stuff, there might be some weapons that are on par with crafted, but you're never going to loot something with like a 5x multiplier that's going to go around one-shotting players in an AoE like you could in pre-CU. That's just dumb. No real reason to have that. The CU is meant to be a more balanced thing. But if you actually start playing the CU, you'll probably notice that everything's kind of OP, and if everybody's OP, nobody's really OP, so it's like balances out. It's pretty cool. Let's go over some of the profession requirement differences. So instead of needing Master Medic to go Doctor, you only need 2 lines in Medic, which is to say, like, that's what I was talking about earlier. They changed professional requirements. It's pretty cool. It's nice. It's neat. For Combat Medic, you don't need to Master Medic anymore. You just need 1 line of Medic and then 1 line of Marksman. And then to do things like Rifleman or Pistolier or Carbineer, you're going to have to actually get 2 lines of Marksman. So this, in a way, got nerfed. You can't just, go master up the Rifles tree and then Master Rifleman. You actually got to get the Rifles tree. Then you got to get the Range Support tree, it is a nerf. It just is. But Bounty Hunter, you're not going to have to Master Marksman anymore. You just need 1 line of Marksman, which is the Range Support. And then you go over here to Scout. Where's Scout? There it is. And then you get this line of Scout, and boom, you got it. Squad Leader, 1 line of Scout, 1 line of Marksman. I don't think you needed Master Marksman before, did you? Did you? I think you might have. I don't remember. We can actually check. Let's look. Master Marksman over here. Nope. 1 line of Squad Leader. Okay, guys, ignore. I've only been playing pre-CU for like 21 years. What do I know? Anyways, Bounty Hunter, you don't have to Master Marksman anymore. Commando, you don't have to Master Marksman anymore. Just 1 line here in Marksman, 1 line in Brawler. Brawler has also had the same treatment as the range trees. So instead of just being TK with 1 unarmed tree, you're going to have to go up the 2-handed tree. To get Fencer, you're going to have to go up the 1-handed tree and the 2-handed tree. To do Pikeman, you got to go up the polearm tree and you got to go up the 2-handed tree. Wow, it seems like everybody's going to have to... Wait, no, sorry. I got this wrong. I misread. So for Fencer, you need the unarmed tree and the 1-handed tree, so on and so forth. My bad, bros. It's like kind of late. It's like, yeah, it's late. So, okay, anyways, onward. So, one last thing before we go. We need to talk about armor. So armor is like really important in the CU. This is probably one of the biggest changes. It actually affected crafting. I think Armorsmith is actually, the process of crafting armor is a little different. I think that's probably the crafting class that got affected the most. So we're going to talk about armor and a little bit about how it works. Also, we're going to actually have to talk about weapons a little bit to emphasize the armor stuff, right? So you'll notice this is a wrist armor chest plate. There are 3 categories of armor. There's battle, there's reconnaissance, and there's assault. Reconnaissance is like energy protection specialist, right? And then assault is kinetic energy, or kinetic energy in real life is like a thing, right? So anyways, kinetic is a assault specialty, and then battle is supposed to be like a mix of the 2. You can see my chest plate over here. I have more energy protection than I do kinetic. When you click on a weapon, it's going to have a base damage type, and the base damage type is either going to be energy or kinetic. Now, some weapons are going to have elemental damage on it, and the way elemental damage works is that no matter what ability you're using, it's just going to add that much elemental damage to the attack. So we'll look over here at this electric polearm, for example. It has got a base type of kinetic damage, and then it's got 294 to 600 damage, but then it's got an elemental damage of electricity, with the element damage being 51. So if you use an ability that does like a 2 times damage multiplier on this electric polearm, maybe the max you hit for is like 1200, but that multiplier will not apply to the element damage. Instead, it'll just add 51 damage to your attack. Now, that is where the armor factors in. So you're going to see like, okay, so it's going to negate the kinetic portion. Also, numbers are no longer in percentages. I mean, they are in percentages, but it's not linear. So there's a bunch of diminishing returns on armors, and maybe I'll go over an armor guide about like, you know, more specifics, but everything's been changed to the number system. And if you've played NGE, you'll notice that too. It all started in the CU with this one. So the special protections, the elemental damages that can exist are heat, cold, acid, and electricity. By the way, if you're curious, Jedi do energy damage with an elemental damage that is dependent on what their saber color is. So like I think green is acid and red is heat and so on and so forth. So yeah, there's not too much, it's not too complicated, but there being 3 different armor types, reconnaissance, battle, and assault, your profession is going to dictate what you're qualified to actually wear. As you can see, there's a hindrance stat on armor, and it exists on all armor. And this can actually be experimented down on depending on the armor smith, but for the most part, this is actually like, I actually created this armor. You see how it says Rami? It's pretty cool, huh? Oh, actually, you know what? I frog generated this armor. Never mind. I'm lying, guys. I did do Armor Smith. I did test Armor Smith, and I was actually the one that discovered how this hindrance system worked, so go me. Anyways, so there's a movement penalty, an accuracy penalty, and rate of fire penalty if you're not qualified to wear that armor. And it comes in chunks of qualification. So we'll go over to Pistolier, and we'll look for where the armor penalty stuff stops. Let's see. Okay, so down here you see reconnaissance, armor, accuracy, mitigation, 10%, reconnaissance, armor, movement, mitigation, 10%, and reconnaissance, armor, rate of fire, 30%. Over here, you can see that the movement penalty is 20%, and then the accuracy is 40%. That's the base, and then it shows me mine. And then the rate of fire is 60%. So right off the rip, if I were to wear reconnaissance armor at Novice Pistolier, I would get rid of half this movement penalty. I would get rid of 1/4 of this accuracy penalty and half of this rate of fire penalty. So wearing armor you're not really qualified for isn't really the play in the CU. Your armor is bound to what you qualify for. And because of this, you're not going to see a whole lot of people. I mean, you're going to see people in composite armor, I'm sure, because that's an assault armor in the CU. But you're going to see a lot more armor diversity. And that is one thing I do like about the CU, is it brought that about. Like, you can look at someone, there's no appearance tab or anything like that, like the NGE had, but you can look at someone, you can see their armor, you can know, oh, that's reconnaissance. He's probably resistant to energy. Maybe I'll pull out a kinetic weapon. Or, you know, they're wearing battle armor, so maybe it doesn't matter what I do. You can also still craft either one. Like in battle, you can still go heavy into energy and less into kinetic, or heavy into kinetic and less into energy for the crafting stuff. But for the most part, most people just did like a balance. Unless they maybe are battle armor qualified and they're a bounty hunter and they only hunt Jedi, maybe they'll go into energy or something like that. Anyways, so that exists. So this is something to keep in mind whenever you're going through your professions. You don't want these hindrances on you. You know, see, I've got this wrist chest plate, right? The wrist chest plate, you can see how I'm moving now. We're going to switch armor. Oh, it didn't do anything. It didn't. Oh, that's right. I've got enough qualification that it doesn't hinder my movement. Whoops. I didn't think about that. I'm sorry. Let's do the Shock Trooper, which has a 59% hindrance. So we'll do that. And then you can see I've got these debuffs on me. It's not a fun time. We're moving pretty slow. It's not great, right? So we don't want to wear assault armor with this build that I've currently got, because we're just going to be gimping ourselves like really freaking hard. You're actually slowing yourself. On the early levels, it's not a good idea to wear armor, because you don't actually get any armor qualifications till you've acquired a novice box of an elite or hybrid profession. So Pistolier, Combat Medic, you know, TK actually, let's go over TK, because TK is a unique case. So let's go over Teräs Käsi real quick. Brawler, Teräs Käsi. Teräs Käsi actually gets innate armor. So it'll say at novice it's plus 20. So what that actually means is 2,000 armor. 1 point of innate armor is 100 armor in the CU. So at max Teräs Käsi Master, you will have a total of, I believe, 60 points, 60 innate armor. So that'll be like 6,000 armor, which is not bad. And then also, like, there's a bunch of other neat little things that Teräs Käsi get that make them desirable to play. But anyways, just saying that's how it works. TK is the one exception to the rule. Everyone else, you know, squad leader, they're wearing assault armor. Fencer, they're wearing battle armor. You know, commandos wearing assault armor, so on and so forth. So you can just, you know, get an idea. One thing I forgot to mention is special attack cost and range. So the stats on your weapon obviously matter. This weapon, you can see it's a decent weapon. It's a DE10. DE10s are actually pretty good in the CU. They're actually like worthwhile. 407 max, 407 min, 1036 max. There are pups. I'll make a video about pups later. They are trade-offs. They're not really kind of like pre-CU where you just like throw it on and like who cares. Like no, there's actual trade-offs to be made with pups. So that's cool. But you'll notice the range is 0 to 35 meters. So pistols are not as long range as rifles or carbines. Pistols are actually the shortest. This doesn't apply to melee. All the melee weapons are like 5 meters, even sabers are 5 meters. But the ranged weapons actually have shorter or longer ranges. And in fact, there are some weapons, so like if you're a carbineer, there are some weapons that'll be like 50 meters, some will be 45, some are 55. You know, the weapon can actually change the range. And these are not effective ranges, these are just ranges. Like if they're at 36 meters, I can't attack them. Whereas in pre-CU, I can attack someone from 64 meters with my SWG5. That's right, we've got a scope on that thing, we can see down the sights and just, you know, snipe those little Jawa children. But no, here you've got an actual limit to your range, so you should factor this in when you're trying to play the game. Yes, as a pistolier, you can get kited by a rifleman. It'll happen. Also, when you're holding a ranged weapon, you have a weapon hindrance. It means you move slower while holding a ranged weapon. This actually exists in pre-CU, but it's more pronounced in the CU. So as soon as I take off my weapon, I'm going to start moving a little bit faster. And it is noticeable. It is noticeable when you're playing the game. It's not as noticeable pre-CU, but it does exist in pre-CU. They like upped it. I don't want to say upped it to 11 because it's not like insane in the CU, but you know, melee do not have this hindrance. And I think it's something SOE did as a form of like balance between melee and range, because when we go through the trees later, you're going to notice like pretty much all the CC, I mean, there's some debuffs from melee get, but all the CC kind of exists for range. So I don't know, just saying. Otherwise, oh wait, no, hold on guys. I didn't talk about special attack cost. Special attack cost is absolutely gonna matter. You're gonna like have different special attack costs depending on weapon. I think like pistols are probably like the least special attack cost, and then there's an equivalent for melee, so on and so forth. That's going to drain your action. Whenever you use an ability, it's going to drain your action, and it's going to drain a little mind, and your heals are never dependent on special attack costs. So don't worry about sack for your essential, your healers. If you're playing like Master Combat Medic and your role is just to heal players in your group, don't worry about sack on your weapon unless you are also DPSing, in which case then it does matter. But for special attacks, your sack is going to matter, and it's going to affect both your action and your mind. And yes, you can run out of mind attacking people, even if you're not being attacked and not healing. It matters. So that said, I think I've said everything. All right, guys. So I'm really hyped for the CU. I'm making this video for a reason. That reason is the day of the combat upgrade is almost upon us, brothers. So get hyped, get ready. There's more content coming. I'm not forgotten about Stars Reach. I will make more Stars Reach content. I'll make more Star Wars Galaxies content. We're going to make videos about, or I'm going to make videos talking about the differences between, well, not differences, but I'm going to go over the classes. I'm not going to talk about the game like differences again. I think I covered most of it. You know, you can only encap to health. I don't know if I mentioned that. Maybe that was like the one important thing I should have really mentioned. The difference between pre-CU and CU. You know, things are, you know, I got ADHD. Who cares? We're all just going to deal with it. All right. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. I'll catch y'all later. See you in the next one. Peace.